I should have recorded this video a few days ago when I made the deck, but I guess I'm just gonna have to go ahead and deal with it right now. So, I have wanted to do a few more commanders from Murders at Karlov Manor, and I figured that one of the best ones I could possibly deal with would be Niv Mizzet Guild Pact, for a couple of reasons. One, $15 decks are really constrained by their mana bases, and it's a 5-color deck, so we need to build a 5-color mana base in that $15 constraint. And two, I wanted to take one of the most expensive archetypes in Magic the Gathering and make it again, but this time with even more constraints. So I guess today we're going to be going over 5-color dragons for $15, starring our boy Niv Mizzet the Guild Pact from the new Murders at Karlov Manor set. So, Mizzet Guild Pact is a WUBRG commander, 6/6. He's got hexproof from all multicolored spells and flying like most dragons. When he deals combat damage to a player, you can deal X damage to any target, so you've got removal. A target player draws X cards, you got draw. You gain life, you got life gain. And X is the number of different color pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colors. So, here are our deck building constraints, and here is our challenge. We need to make sure that the majority of the dragons we are playing in the deck are all 2-color dragons specifically, and we have to make sure that the majority of the cards in the deck are 2-color cards. This is going to give us a very narrow scope to build the deck, and it's going to be really hard to get that within the $15 limit. So, because of how card prices work, I managed to get it within 50 cents of that limit. We are at $15.78. I think that that is a fair enough margin given the deck constraints we are working with. So let's go ahead and talk about the kind of deck that we are building. Like I said, we are building a 5-color dragon deck where most of, if not all, the dragons have to be 2-color dragons. Our deck is sitting at, if we go ahead and look at our numbers here, we managed to have 16 dragons in the deck. That's not counting the shapeshifters we are running in the deck, which can clone themselves and be dragons as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first thing we got to talk about. So Niv Mizzet may have his own draw clause attached to him, but when you're playing a dragon deck, it is very likely you're going to get blown out several times. So we want to have a draw package on top of our dragon, and there's 2 things we can use for this. We can use more dragons that have draw clauses, and we can use guild mages. These are going to be the second half of our deck. This is dragons, and this is guild mages. Guild mages are always 2 colors, and they've always got 2 pretty powerful effects locked behind what normally would be a restrictive mana clause, but I'll show you how we're going to bypass that restrictive mana clause in this deck. But let's talk about the Dimir Guild Mage. 2 mana, 2/2 human wizard. It's Dimir, so it counts for 2 different colors for our Niv Mizzet. We can pay 4 to make target player draw a card at sorcery speed, or make a player discard a card at sorcery speed. So when I show you how we're going to break our mana base later on in the deck, you'll see that we can use this to dump a person's hand out completely and hose them out of the game, or we can use this to just draw fresh cards throughout the game. Then we have the League Guild Mage. We can pay 4 and tap it to draw a card, or pay X and red and tap it to copy any instant or sorcery spell that we control with mana value X and throw it anywhere that we want. So we're going to use this to clone a few spells. We've got 5 instants and 5 sorceries in the deck, so there are things for this, even though it is primarily going to be a draw engine for us. Then we have Corlessa the Scale Singer, a Simic dragon that allows us to look at the top card of our deck at any time and then cast dragon spells from the top of our library. So we are going to use this and deck shuffling manipulation and our draw power so that we will be able to gain advantage with Corlessa. If we had a less restrictive dragon type advantage, then we would be able to run more dragons for Corlessa. The more dragons you can pack into the deck, the better. But we are running with a tight budget constraint and a tight dragon package. So Then we have the Nivix Guild Mage, and is it 2/2? Pay 3 to draw a card, discard a card, so we got a looting effect, or we can copy an instant or sorcery spell that we control with its effect as well. So more ways to copy our dirtily spells later in the game. Then we have Dragon Lord Ojitai, an Azorius dragon that says it's got hexproof as long as it's untapped, and if it deals combat damage to a player, we look at the top 3 cards of our library, put 1 into our hand, and the rest at the bottom of our library in any order. So anytime it makes impact with somebody, we get an anticipate effect. Then we have Furkrag, the Cunning Instigator, one of my favorite dragons in the game, and I wish that I had enjoyed the goad deck built around him more. Turns out I'm not a big fan of the goad mechanic, but in this deck, it'll actually do really well for us. Whenever one or more of our dragons attack an opponent, we can goad a creature that person controls, and anytime a creature that is goaded or is forced to attack by any means attacks an opponent, we get to put a 1/1 counter on Furkrag and then draw a card. So if Furkrag survives a single turn cycle and we have 3 or 4 dragons punching our opponents, we're going to draw 3 to 4 cards unless they can do tapping manipulation. So choose your targets wisely with Furkrag, and he'll be able to draw you stuff. And then, of course, we have Niv Mizzet himself. Again, Niv Mizzet the Firemine. Anytime you draw a card, deal 1 damage to a target. So this is going to be one of our removal spells whenever our main Niv Mizzet punches somebody. But also, we can use this to just tap and draw a card. Primarily, though, the big thing we're going to be doing with this, the main reason it's in here, aside from having another copy of Mizzet for shits and giggles, is Niv Mizzet Guild Pact has the ability where if we punch somebody, we will draw X cards, and then we deal X damage to a thing. So let's say we've got 4 creatures with our stipulations for Niv Mizzet. We got 4 creatures with different color combinations that Niv Mizzet wants to see. Remember, he wants only 2 color combinations. So things like Azorius, things like Izzet, things like Simic. He wants to see these particular color combinations. Niv Mizzet will see that we are drawing like 4 cards with that effect, and then he'll aim 4 damage wherever we want, split however we want as well. So if we're seeing a big 8/8 creature, we can go ahead and stack both of our Niv Mizzet's damage on top of it to kill it. If we're trying to kill a bunch of tokens, we can throw our Niv Mizzet main fire damage at our big commander, and then throw all the little damage from the Niv Mizzet Firemine at all the tokens. There's a lot of ways that we can use this particular effect, but also remember, it just lets you draw cards when you need it to. And then we have Niv Mizzet Reborn. This is our biggest draw package in the entire deck. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For every color pair that is unique amongst them, put one of those cards in your hand. So if you've got an Izzet card, an Azorius card, and a Simic card, and a Dimir card, then you get to get all 4 of those. That's what he wants, unique color pairs, just like the main Niv Mizzet of our deck does. Then we have the Mask of Riddles. A equipped creature gains fear, so it's another bit of added evasion on top of the flying our dragons will have. If the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, we may draw a card. This also counts towards the permanents that have multi-color typings that Niv Mizzet wants to see. And then we have Spicytech, Gandalf the Westward Voyager. Anytime we cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, which is a good chunk of our deck because it is a dragon deck, each opponent will reveal the top cards of their library. If any of those cards share type with it, so usually a creature, then we may cast that copy for free. We can cast that copy the spell, choose new targets for the copy, it's done. And then each opponent will draw a card. But if they do not have things that we want, we just draw a card with his effect instead. So Gandalf is going to do a lot of work for us with the type of deck that we have. But drawing is not the only important thing we can do in this deck. We have a bunch of big dirtily creatures. We need to be able to ramp to those creatures. So let's talk about the 16-card deep ramp package we are running here. Starting with Letter of Acceptance. I love this card in budget decks because not only does it tap for any color, which is really useful, it also allows us to sack it late in the game to draw cards. Mirror Convert is a 2-mana rock on a creature that's pretending it's a mirror. Then we have Scampering Surveyor, which is a budget sad robot. Grab any basic land out of our deck, put it on the battlefield. Coiling Oracle lets us look at the top card of our deck, put it in our hand if it's not a land, but if it is a land, we get to put it on our battlefield. Honored Heirloom, tap for any mana, and tell the reanimation players that they can get cooked. And then we have Draconic Disciple, a 3-mana human shaman that can add a mana of any color and sack itself to create a dragon token late in the game if we needed to. But remember, it also counts as one of our Gruul creatures, so we have more creatures that Niv Mizzet wants to see. Command Sphere, tap for any color, sack it late in the game. Greenside Watcher, and I'm already giving away what the deck strategy is now. Greenside Watcher lets you untap target gate. I guess we're going to have to go ahead and talk about the mana base a little sooner rather than later. But yeah, we can untap target gate with this. This is one of the ways we are going to be cheesing our mana, abusing our mana in this deck. Font of Fertility is a Wayfarer's Bauble that's green. Search for Tomorrow searches for any basic land, puts it on the battlefield untapped. It also counts as a turn 1 play. We can use with the suspend ability. Wayfarer's Bauble, the original, comes onto the battlefield. We can sack it to get a land from our deck onto the battlefield if it's basic. Growth Spiral, it's Coiling Oracle, but it doesn't look like a Coiling Oracle. It's an instant. It's also a 2-color spell, which means that we can see it with things like Niv Mizzet Reborn, which is really, really important for what our deck wants to do. Arcane Signet, because somehow it was 60 cents when I started this challenge, and it's 30 cents now, so now I can run it in more decks. God, that's so weird that that happened. So we have Arcane Signet, tap for any color that our commander has in its color identity. Ornithopter of Paradise is an Arcane Signet with a booty of 2. Leyline Prowler, a Golgari mana dork that can tap to add a mana of any color, and of course, it's a permanent that has 2 colors, so our commander gets to see it. And then Kiora's Follower, which lets us untap target permanent, and it really is going to look a lot like Greenside Watcher when we're done. Trust me, this card is going to be doing the exact same things as Greenside Watcher in this deck. But that's not the only bit of ramp, quote, that we are running. We are also running 5 specific kinds of, not really ramp, but there is a subcategory of ramp. These are our gate fetch cards, because, spoiler alert, we are running the Guild Dragon with a bunch of guild gates. So, let's go ahead and take a look here. Gatekeeper Vine. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land or a gate. Put it in your hand. District Guide. It's the same exact card. Explore the Underdark. Grab 2 gates from the deck and then take the initiative. You will always keep the initiative. You're the dragon player. Keep punching people in the face and you'll keep the initiative basically forever. Then Navigation Orb. We can play it for 3, sack it for 2, get 2 basic lands or gates, 1 to the battlefield, 1 to our hand, and then open the gate, search our library for a gate, put it into our hand. So this is going to be how we are going to abuse our deck. We're going to go ahead and real quick, we're going to skip. We normally wouldn't do this, but we're skipping over to the land base because it's so important. 3 of every basic land, 5 fetching lands, Evolving Wilds, Promising Vein, Shire Terrace, Terramorphic, and Escape Tunnel, and then 17 gate cards. And the star of the show, the 2 stars of the show, are these guys right here. Gone Gate says all of our gates enter the battlefield tapped, and we can use it as a reflecting pool for gates. Add a mana of any color that a gate we play can produce. And then Baldur's Gate, which is a Nykthos, but it is a Nykthos for gates. Add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of other gates you control. So Heap Gate is a gate, Gateway Plaza is a gate, and then we have the guild gates for every single guild in Ravnica. So the Gone Gate can tap for any of these. Then we've got these Cliff Gates, Heap Gate, Black Dragon Gate. These are all gates that operate exactly like the Thriving Lands. They tap for 1 mana of any. They tap for a mana of any color, and also they can tap for the mana that is listed on them. So black for Black Dragon Gate, red for Cliff Gate, and green for Manor Gate. We're not running the White Gate because it's 50 cents for some reason, because I don't understand the market. But anywho, we are going to be abusing this Baldur's Gate. So with all the gates that are in the deck, we're going to be searching for lots of gates, putting them on the board, getting our mana that way. Gone Gate is going to make our mana base feel like it's not a budget mana base, because none of our lands will come into play tapped. But the Baldur's Gate, this one is very, very important. So because we add mana of any one color where X is the number of gates we control, let's say we've got 5 gates, right? Baldur's Gate is adding us 5 mana on top of whatever mana those gates are adding. So like 7 mana total when you count tapping Baldur's Gate and tapping the other 2 gates. And then we're going to use things like Kiora's Follower to untap the Baldur's Gate, or Greenside Watcher to untap the Baldur's Gate, and keep using it to spend more and more mana. This is how we are going to abuse the mana base to play big dragons. If you look at the actual spread for our deck, we do not have what I would normally call a good spread for a deck. Normally you want a bit of a bell curve, because that means you have a good mana curve in your deck, but we are having a lot of 2-mana cards because these are all of our guild mages, and then we have just this big spike of creatures that are 5 mana or more in the deck because we are playing a dragon deck. When you're playing a dragon deck, you need to have either a lot of ramp or you need to have lands that can abuse themselves to give you lots of mana. And we are choosing to do both because we are a budget deck, and whatever we can do, whatever is in our power that allows us to survive in the game, that is what we have to do. We have to make sure that we are doing everything in our power to function within the constraints of our mana restrictions, within the constraints of our budget restrictions. If you're playing a budget deck, you need to make sure that your deck is operating smoothly. You cannot use "my deck is a low budget deck" as an excuse for not performing well. Every Magic player can do well in Commander if you just play well and use the correct cards. Don't play like all of the Timmy, Gigantosauruses and wonder why you're not winning. Speaking of, I've already talked at length about making sure that your deck has more removal, so we have 10 dedicated removal spells in the deck, starting with Binding of the Old Gods, which we have in here because it is a permanent on the battlefield, and Niv Mizzet will see it. Destroy a non-land permanent an opponent controls, then search your library for a forest, put it on the battlefield tapped, then creatures you control gain death touch until end of turn as a saga. So not only is Niv Mizzet seeing this for multiple turns, not only is it killing a card, not only is it allowing us to make certain that we have more ramp in the deck, but it's just doing everything we want. It gives us death touch at the end so we can do a big swing later on in the game. Even our guild mages get to swing without feeling like they're going to collide into anything bad, because nobody wants to trade their commander for a guild mage. Then we have Putrefy, blow up a creature or an artifact. Mortify, blow up an enchantment or a creature. Both of them 2-mana spells, so the other Niv Mizzet can see them. Then we have Immerstum Predator, a vampire dragon that if it becomes tapped, we can exile a card from our graveyard or any graveyard. This is the second way we have to mess with graveyards in the deck, and it of course is a Rakdos dragon. Is it Charm as a counterspell or a shock or a draw to discard 2, and it's 2 mana. D-Spark can get rid of any permanent with mana value 4 or greater, so lots of commanders get exiled with this, and it's a 2-mana spell, so the other Mizzet can see it. Azorius Guildmage can either counter target activated ability or tap any creature. So when somebody's going into their upkeep, if they've got things like Savala, Heart of the Wild, just tell the Savala to go offline. If they've got a Voltron commander they want to smack you with, just tell it to go offline. Azorius Guildmage puts in work in this deck. Then we have Deadly Complication, a Rakdos kill spell that can blow up a target creature or put a 1/1 counter on a suspected creature you control. That part's not super important. The important part for us is that this is a 3-mana murder that we can get as a 2-color spell so that other Niv Mizzet can see it when he's trying to draw his cards. Then we have Lausanne Dragon's Legacy. Anytime we cast one of our 16 dragons, he deals damage equal to its mana value to any target that isn't a commander. So a repeatable way to blow up cards or just burn people to death, honestly. Then we have Hostage Taker, another permanent we have that will come onto the battlefield, and it will exile any creature or artifact until Hostage Taker leaves the battlefield. We can then cast that card for any mana color at all, so we can take somebody's commander and then it will probably just go back to the command zone, let's be honest. We can take somebody's important piece of their strategy and cast it on our board. If somebody's got, again, like a Zavala, Heart of the Wild, we want a card like that. It can't fit in our budget, but it can if we steal it. So we've got these 10 removal cards that are dedicated ways to clear cards off the board, but they are not the only removal, because remember, our commander is also a removal spell, but we also need to make sure our commander is protected because he is so important to our strategy. So to make certain that our commander stays safe, we have 4 dedicated pieces of protection for the commander, starting with Pippin, Guard of the Citadel. It's got Vigilance and Ward 1. You can tap it to make another creature you control gain protection from the card type of any choice of any choice of yours until end of turn. So it's a mini Mother of Runes we can use on our commander. They path to exile it, we tap Pippin, we say no. Also, conveniently, he's an Azorius creature, so he counts towards the double mana restriction that our commander wants. Then we have Goldforged Thopterix, flying, lifelink, every legendary permanent, which is most of our dragons, and of course our commander has Ward 2. Just staple Ward 2 onto our commander and increase our double mana count on the board. Shielding Plaques, when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Enchanted creature cannot be the target of spells or abilities an opponent controls. So Shielding Plaques, of course, gives us it's a cantrip, it replaces itself when it comes onto the board, but most importantly, it makes sure that our commander cannot be targeted by stuff, and it's Simic, so it counts towards our double mana stuff. And then the Giant's Amulet, 1 mana, equip 2, equip creature gets 1/0, and hexproof as long as it is untapped, which is going to be the majority of the time in our game, unless we are specifically trying to make sure our commander is slammed at people. But just a little bit of added protection is always helpful. If we know that we've got a control player on the board, then we can just hold our commander up until we can get one of our other methods of protecting our commander. Giant's Amulet, wonderful card. Once you are out of a budgetary constraint, though, you can swap it out for a Swiftfoot Boots and get a little more utility out of that protection piece. But we also need to make sure that our dragons can hit when they come onto the board. So let's go ahead and take a look at the ways we have to grant haste in the deck, starting with Nahiri's Resolve. All creatures we control get 1/0 and have haste, and at the beginning of our end step, we exile any number of non-token artifacts or creatures we control and return them to the battlefield under our owner's control at the beginning of our next upkeep. So it gives our creatures haste, so the summoning sickness they have doesn't matter, and this is another way of protecting our commander. Now, sorcery speed removal will just not do anything to us. We can just go, oh yeah, you have Feed the Swarm? Hit Nahiri's Resolve. It's your only legal target. Then we have the Boros Guildmage. 2 mana, 2/2. We can pay 2 to make a creature gain haste or first strike. Use this as a combat trick. Use this to enable a dragon that you're summoning every turn. Perfectly reasonable card. Does a lot of work in your deck. But that is not all. We also have another section we need to talk about. These are, we're just going to go ahead and call them our big dragons. These are the dragons that's only purpose is to come out and hit hard. So we're starting off with Culligan Storm's Fury. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, all creatures you control get 1/0 until end of turn. That counts for every dragon. So if you swing with 3 dragons, all your dragons get 3/0 until end of turn. So stack multiple dragons on the board and just swing with Culligan. It's also Rakdos. All the dragons here are dual color, so they will count towards Mizit's ability. Atarka World Render. All of our dragons have double strike if Atarka attacks. Dromoko. When a dragon attacks, we can bolster 2. So that's for every single dragon we have. All of them will bolster 2. All of them will just give 2 to 1/1 counters to any creature. Or choose a creature with the least toughness among creatures you control and put 2 1/1 counters on it. But again, if we're swinging with multiple dragons, we're just going to get a bunch of triggers of this. Adult Gold Dragon. It's a Boros dragon with flying, lifelink, and haste. I don't know how best to explain. It's just a good card. It's got keywords on it. It's got good keywords. And then Thrakis the Butcher. If it attacks, double the power of all dragons you control until end of turn, which is massive and can combine with a particular bit of je ne sais quoi that's in our deck that I'll show you here in a moment. But we have some dragons dedicated to utility as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. We have Malfagor first. As a board wipe, when it enters the battlefield, discard your hand. Every opponent sacks a creature for every card you discard this way. Our commander draws us lots of cards, so we should be able to wipe the entire board with this, and then we punch somebody with our commander, and then we draw that hand right back. Then we have Silumgar, the Drifting Death, a Dimir dragon, flying, hexproof. Whenever a dragon attacks, creatures the defending player controls get -1/-1 until end of turn. So just go to the token player, swing with 2 or 3 dragons, wipe their entire board, laugh maniacally. You're using a Dimir dragon. You're basically a villain. Just accept it. Then we have an honorary dragon in the copies section, Moria of the Frost. You may have it come down as a copy of any permanent you control, except it's legendary, which is really good, don't get me wrong. Most important part of this, though, is that it is a changeling, which means that while it is in your hand, it is a dragon spell. So if you are casting this and you have something like Law's Hand on the board, he actually will see that clone and go, oh, yeah, that looks like a dragon to me. Any dragon's a goal. That's fine. That's dragon enough. It's going to burn somebody for a thing. And then, of course, Moria will come down as a copy of anything, and then you may have extras of whatever it is. Make him another guild mage if you need him to be one. Make him another dragon if you need him to be one. But don't target any of your dragons who happen to be legendary, because, of course, legendary rule will just smack him. He can also come down as a copy of a mana rock if you really need him to. He can be a ramp piece. He can be another copy of things like Nahiri's Resolve. That way you can make sure you've got redundancy on it. Moria's just a good card. But again, he's an honorary dragon. And then we have Lazav, the Multifarious. When he enters the battlefield, surveil, so we get a little top deck manipulation. Pay X, make him become a copy of any creature in your graveyard with mana value X, except his name is now Lazav and is legendary. So any of our dragons that are in the graveyard, he will be able to copy and just become another copy of them throughout the game. No matter how many dragons our opponents kills, Lazav can be them. We can also use him in a desperate plea. If our commander costs way too much, we can just let him hit the grave, and then let Lazav become a copy of our commander if we need him to. We have one utility dragon we need to get into. That's not the utility dragon. This is the utility dragon. Hypersonic Dragon. You can cast sorceries as though they had flash. It's an Izzet dragon to increase our Izzet count. The dragon has haste. Main reason it's in here, though, realistically, is because the story of Niv Mizzet involves him cloning himself a bunch of times and making a bunch of really, really shitty dragon babies, and he's one of the shitty dragon babies. So he's here. But we are dragons. We need to make sure that we have ways to get our dragons back when they die, because they have giant targets on their back. So we have 2 reanimation or recursion pieces. We have Regrowth and Timeless Witness. They both put a card from our graveyard to our hand. And of course, Timeless Witness can be eternalized with all the extra mana that we are getting throughout the game if we need him to be we need her to be brought back. But I mentioned one piece of je ne sais quoi. I mentioned one piece of equipment that, by the way, Moria of the Frost can clone if we want it to. This is one of the reasons things like Thrakkus the Butcher and Atarka can be so dangerous in our deck. We have an alternative win con because we are a Gates deck. It is a card called Glaive of the Guild Pact. Equipped creature gets 1/0 for every gate you control and gets Vigilance and Menace. Glaive of the Guild Pact is the reason that we can use things like Giant's Amulet without feeling bad, because we can just grant our commander Vigilance with this. Glaive allows us to just say, hey, Niv Mizzet, you're not hitting for 6, you're hitting for like 12 because we've got our gates out. You're not hitting for 12 though, you're hitting for like 24 because of Atarka, or 48 because of Thrakkus. I guess actually what I'm saying is, put Glaive of the Guild Pact on your commander and just turn him sideways at somebody and watch them scream. This will turn your commander from a utility dragon deck into a Voltron deck overnight, and nobody will see it coming. They'll be like, oh, he's playing gates, he's gonna hit me with Mace's End. Nope, the gates are actually a sword, and it's coming for your butthole. But anyways, that was my take on Niv Mizzet Guild Pact. I wanted to do an even more restrictive dragon deck, and while our dragon count wasn't able to be as large as I would like it to be, we still managed to get there with Niv Mizzet by mixing dragons and guild mages with the new buddy boy. Let me know what your takes on Niv Mizzet the Guild Pact would be. I think he's gonna be a fun as hell commander for anybody who wants to play 5-color dragons and wants to be more unique. Everybody's seen Tiamat decks, everybody's seen Dragon decks. Nobody will expect 5-color Mizzet to be the dragon tribal deck at the table. So get your Kindred gloves on, go have fun, play Niv Mizzet Guild Pact. Let me know how it ends up going for you. I think you're gonna have a fun-ass time. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching these videos. Thank you so much for helping us get to just about 2,500 subscribers now. It's insane, and I can't wait to see how far this can go. As always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.